The Xbox One X is finally here. It's been over a year since we first heard about it, but now it's finally landed. People are going to be flocking to the shops to pick one up. But if you're in the situation where you want to buy a new console, you're thinking you want it to be an Xbox, but you're a little bit torn between the two and you want to know what the advantages, disadvantages of each one are, and ultimately what is going to be the best thing to pick up, well, this video is for you and hopefully it will help you make an informed buying decision. First, let's talk design, because both the One S and the One X are actually quite similar. In terms of volume, they're more or less identical, and if you are upgrading from an Xbox One S to an X, it's going to sit exactly where your other one was, and it will even use the exact same cables as well. Design-wise, I really like both of them. I think they're very attractive units, though me personally, I am definitely leaning towards the X, as the colour scheme I think is a lot more friendly for a lot of home entertainment units, but of course it will be down to personal preferences, and there will be plenty more colour options to come in the future for the X, as well as all the existing ones of the S. Delve a little bit deeper though into the two consoles and you will start to see some differences. For instance, the Xbox One X has moved the USB port on the front panel to the right hand side, and around the back they've actually incorporated a little notch above the HDMI out that should make plugging it in when you can't see what you're doing all that a little bit easier. But I think the main difference really is that because the X is a more powerful bit of hardware, it needs a better cooling solution. So on the top of the Xbox One S there is a central fan that exhausts heat. That's completely gone on the Xbox One X, and it's been replaced by a vapor chamber design that is going to be a lot more efficient, and as such it will be able to cope with that extra bit of heat that is going to be output from the console as a result of the more powerful hardware. Both the consoles will output in 4K at up to 60 frames a second. Both support HDR in games, movies and pretty much all applications that do support it. And they both got a 4K Blu-ray player, so that if you've got a collection of UHD Blu-rays, you can pop them in and enjoy the full resolution as long as your TV is HDCP 2.2 certified, and if it's HDR, of course you can watch them in HDR, but note that there is no Dolby Vision support, at least at the time of filming, but I'm not entirely sure that it will actually ever come, but that's a conversation for a different day. While both consoles are more or less the same when it comes to home entertainment, the same cannot be said when it comes to gaming performance, as the two are very different kettle of fish. The Xbox One S has 1.4 teraflops of gaming performance, whereas the X has 6. That's a big difference, and the reason for this difference is because the X can output a true 4K gaming experience. Asterisk. And the reason for this asterisk is because it pretty much depends on two things. Firstly, and pretty much the obvious thing, it requires you to have a 4K TV with HDR if you want to play in HDR. But also you're going to need an Xbox One X enhanced title. And this can mean different things depending on the developer. So you can get no enhancement, in which case the game will pretty much be the same on the S and the X. Or you can get partial enhancements where things like HDR have been added. Or you can get the full beans, which will mean 4K visuals, HDR support, and just a completely different experience between the two. So while it will depend on the exact title you're playing, the differences between 1080p over on the S versus 4K on the X, it's massive. If you've never seen 4K before, you've got a big 4K TV, the difference is night and day, and it's something that really does compete with PC gaming. Obviously it's not quite there, you don't have all of the options to choose from, and you don't have an endless amount of GPU horsepower that you can swap out at any time, but actually for £450 at the time of filming, you're getting actually surprisingly good value when it comes to performance per dollar. Honestly, it's very, very impressive. And it's not just limited to 4K improvements either. While every game might not support native 4K, every game will look better, as the graphic settings themselves are up to the developer. Whether you've got things like better draw distances, textures, tessellation, all of these things will be controlled by the developer and will look better when supported on the X versus the S. You've got things like higher frame rates, so 60 frames a second at 4K is going to be a thing now, which is very, very impressive indeed. And if you do want to learn more about why 60 frames a second is better than 30, you can find my video over there in the top right hand corner. But then for those of you that want games to load quicker, because the console now has 4 GB more memory in a speed that's actually a lot quicker than before, you're going to get games that are loading faster as the games are going to be loaded into memory that little bit quicker. So all in all, a very, very impressive package, and obviously you are getting better performance on the X versus the S. But chances are, if you're watching this video, you knew all of that anyway, and you probably want to know which is going to be the best one to pick up. Well, to sort of look at this as objectively as possible, if you've got the money for either, it doesn't necessarily make sense to go for the X. Firstly, you will need a 4K TV for best results. I know Microsoft will say that you can downsample to 1080p and it's going to look a lot better, but if that is all you plan to do, I don't think that it would be worth picking up for that reason. However, if you've got a 1080p TV now, then you can of course upgrade later to get the full benefits of 4K. But if you're more of a media center guy, you play a few games from here and there, then obviously the S is going to be your best bet, unless you really care about those visuals. But if you're sort of in the middle, deciding between the two, and you're debating whether it's worth saving up that little bit extra bit of money, well, put it this way, how much do you value graphics settings? Because if you have a fairly small TV, you're sitting quite far away, and you don't really mind the difference between 30 and 60 frames a second, then to be honest, it's perfectly fine to pick up an Xbox One S. It's going to be much better value, and you're going to be the ones laughing when you've got all of that extra money that you can then spend on games. But if you've recently invested in a 4K HDR TV and you want the absolute best thing to display on it possible, then this is pretty much the best way to go. It's going to have far better visual fidelity than the S when you're playing a supported title. It has a 4K Blu-ray player, which is something that the PS4 Pro can't do. And unlike gaming PCs, it doesn't run Windows, so it's going to be a lot easier to use in a living room environment. Having said that though, it is still very expensive and its price will put a lot of people off, but I think that it is actually very fair pricing for what you're getting. And if you are one of these people that wants the best looking games and you want the best feeling games possible and you want a gaming console, the Xbox One X is clearly the way you should go. But I don't know, this is my opinion. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments section below. A massive thank you to you guys for watching, and of course to Xbox for actually supplying this early access review sample. It is definitely much appreciated. I'll leave links to the Xbox One S and X down below, so you can do things like check out current pricing and buy it if you want to do that with my affiliate link. But regardless, a massive thank you to you guys for checking out this video. Like the video, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.